I don't come to this race as your typical politician. I don't come from a family with a famous name. I don't come from a family with a whole lot of wealth, and I certainly wasn't picked to be next in line. My mom was a 15-year-old high school dropout. My brother is a high school dropout. I was born and raised in upstate New York in a village called Saranac Lake, where I grew up on food stamps and free lunch. When I was 16 years old, I emancipated myself. I moved out. I lived in my car. I lived with my friends. I slept on their floors. I did anything I could to get through high school. Despite all that, I was a pretty lucky kid. And I was lucky because I had a couple things going for me. I had a quality public education. I had a community that cared. And I had some teachers who took me under their wing and made sure I was on a straight path. And I used that opportunity, and I went to college. I went to the University of Albany, a public college. I went to the Nelson Rockefeller College and got my master's degree. And I started getting involved in public service. And I did it a little different than most people, because I started working in Washington, D.C. for a very liberal congressman, a guy named Mike McNulty. And then I did something weird, because I came back home and I spent a few years working for a very conservative Republican in the New York State Senate, a guy named Tom Libous. And then it gets weirder because I also, for the last 3 years, have been the deputy policy director to Governor Andrew Cuomo. Ooh, right? In between all of that, when I was 25 years old, I actually quit my job. I enlisted in the U.S. Army, and I became a ground combat platoon leader in the 1st Cavalry Division. And I led 40 soldiers across the mountains of eastern Afghanistan in Wardak Province. And I served for 4 years. When you look back at my life and you see a poor kid from upstate New York who had an ability to do some really incredible things on both sides of the aisle, who got to lead soldiers in war, you see a story like mine is pretty impossible. And it's impossible until it wasn't. And that situation is what we're seeing today. 2 years ago, when Donald Trump was elected president, a lot of us woke up thinking, what are we going to do? Any response that we had felt pretty impossible. And we started mobilizing. Started organizing, right? We started recruiting good candidates, and we started talking to people we didn't normally talk to. And all of a sudden, what was impossible wasn't anymore, right? What began as this movement in kitchen tables and living rooms has grown into this really big movement of hope and change. Our moment is right now. We're doing this for the single moms who are working 2 jobs and still can't afford the rent. You're doing this because there are still kids who are born into a broken education system where their ability to succeed is based on their zip code, not their talent or their drive. The people who are losing their homes and their jobs and their savings to the healthcare crisis because they got sick and we can't be adults and fix it. And flipping the Senate is a big deal in New York. We're not trying to flip 23, 24, 25 seats. In New York State, you flip 1 seat and it flips to the Democrats. And that matters, right? This isn't politics, this is policy. It's how we're going to protect women's reproductive health rights and codify Roe v. Wade. It's how we're going to ban the salary history question so that my daughter's not growing up in a world where she's getting paid less because she's a woman working the same job. It's how we're going to do criminal justice reform and ethics reform and fix corruption and get money out of politics. It's how we're going to do voting reform. It's how we're going to make it so kids who grow up like me still stand a chance in this country. Because I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that New York State still stands as a beacon of hope and opportunity for all people, and I need your help. We got a lot of work to do, and let's get to work. Thank you so much for having me.